Phones on silent. Good morning. It is Wednesday, April 2nd. We're here for our regular scheduled county commissioner meeting. We have a full slate of commissioners present, our administrator, our clerk of the board. So at this time, I'll call the meeting to order and ask everybody to please rise and join in the pledge. Thank you. We have, first item is the adoption of the current agenda.
Move for adoption of the current agenda as presented.
Second.
Been a motion, a second, to adopt the agenda as presented. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Takes us down to public comment. Is there anybody in the room for public comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioners. A lot of people, I'm here today because a lot of people had reached out to me about last week's meeting. I didn't watch it till yesterday because I had a wedding and just crazy busy. And so I did, and I just wanted to help the public understand what happened because I think people don't understand how Robert's rules work. And in our commissioner, we have 3 commissioners who have equal authority, but in managing the meeting, the authority rests on the chairman who was elected by the other commissioners. And it is their job to keep decorum. And I felt like Commissioner Didier did a very good job. I wanted to commend Commissioner Mullen too, because you always reference the chair. You always ask the chairman if you may speak. And if anyone wants to know how a meeting needs to be run and the respect of the authority of the chair, look at how Commissioner Mullen speaks. Anyhow, that is what happened, and the Commissioner Didier, the chairman Didier, was right to adjourn the meeting and let everything calm down to get order, and I appreciated that. So that's something for the public to understand. The commissioners, most of you all know that and understand that, but I don't think the public does from the comments that I was given. So I wanted to clarify that. I also wanted to really kind of press something that I brought up several years ago, and that's NACO, the National Association of Counties. They recommend a code of conduct that can be voted on by the commissioners. And I really implore that you do that, to look into that, maybe our county administrator, I don't know. But I think that would really help, not only for the commissioners, but also for in this meeting, but commissioners on outside of this meeting, and how you treat the public. And I can certainly say that I've had a commissioner that has maligned me, spread rumors about me, takes people out to dinner even just to talk about me. It's very interesting. Saw my car at one of my clients' houses while I was getting a contract signed, and I went to talk to him about how I'm a terrible person. So I think that that's something that's important. I know on our sheet, the commissioners, it says, conduct of the body. And I would really like to see something to do about faith as well. The last meeting, someone maligned my faith. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, AKA Mormon. And for some reason, she had a problem with the fact that our prosecutor is a Latter-day Saint, and he ran for an office against someone who was a Latter-day Saint. So I'll leave that. I just think that needs to be added. I respect people of all faiths, and I expect to be treated the same.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment? Is there anybody on the phone? Seeing nobody else step forward, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the approval of the consent agenda. And I believe there are 5 items on the consent agenda today.
Move for approval of the consent agenda items 1 through 5 as presented.
Second.
Been a motion and a second for the 5 items on the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Moves down to regular business. Resolution 2025-0108, creation of Fund 115, creation of Fund 115, 2012-003 CJ Tax Fund, presented by Tim Anderson. Mr. Anderson, please.
Thank you. So this is just a continual, we've been trying to clean up some of the fund types that we have. So there's different fund types that we have. There's the general fund that's for most of the operations of the county. But then there's special revenue funds, there's debt service funds, there's capital projects funds, and then there's enterprise/proprietary funds. And so each one has a specific purpose. And so in the past, we've used funds perhaps how we shouldn't. We've used debt service funds so essentially for the 2024 budget, we've always used our economic development funds. That was always deposited into a debt service fund. So it's essentially a special revenue. It's a sales tax that we were getting. And we would collect it in the debt service fund and then make transfers out of that to pay for, in that case, we were transferring to a capital projects fund, which even then, those were not capital projects that was happening for the most part. It was things to support other local jurisdictions, fire districts, and what have you, that would make requests from the economic development funds. And so for the 2024 budget process, you looked at that, and then I had looked at other counties to see how they're treating that particular monies, and ultimately found that it was a special revenue fund. So this is another one in that quest to continue to fix some of the fund types that we have. And so this is one where we had our criminal justice money that was used so as a bond that we got for the jail and our finance software. And so we were collecting that in a debt service fund, and then we would make transfers from that to current expense for operations. Well, we shouldn't be, once again, that's a special revenue. It's a sales tax that should be collected in a special revenue fund and then transfers made into the debt service fund to pay for the debt service out of there. And so really the debt service fund should only be used for debt service. And so then the transfers then would come from, transfer for operations and current expense would come from this new fund instead of coming from the debt service, because the money would originate and all future sales tax receipts would go into Fund 115, and then transfers current expense for operations, transfers to the 255 fund for debt service payments. So it's just another cleanup of our fund, just trying to get things organized as they should be to be in compliance with generally accepted accounting principles, the BAR's manual, and all that. If there's any questions?
Questions, commissioners? Tim, I got a couple questions. Okay, so this is the Criminal Justice Fund. It was created, a sales tax was created to pay for our new jail and for some of the, you said some of the,
We pay for continuing operations of so there's an amount that goes to, I think the original thing that was stated in the bond was, I think it was a third of it for debt service payments, and then 2/3 for, I could have it switched, but 2/3 for operations. And so there's amounts that's transferred into current expense each year.
Okay.
For operations of public criminal justice.
where are we at on paying off the jail?
It goes out until 2042, I do believe.
2042?
Yes.
And so we're using whatever equation it is, 2/3 for paying off the jail and a third for the maintenance, right? Is that what you said? But I thought you said something electronically in there too.
The original bond it paid for the construction of the jail, and there was also $1 million or $1.5 million, I forget the exact figure, for when we bought One Solution, our finance, our software.
Okay. My question is, these funds, if there's anything left over, could be used for the emergency radios, correct?
I mean, I don't want to answer it. I
Well,
mean,
it's
Jeff may
part
be
of criminal justice. I mean, it's part of criminal justice and then also emergency management. So it's for the, Jeff, what's your view on that?
I don't think so.
You don't
I'd have
think
to
so?
look into it a little more, but I think initially when we were looking at those issues, I want to say that specific tax is earmarked for something else. But I could follow up on that, but
Okay. If you would,
I think the
because
answer is no.
I think we're going to be finding ourselves coming up way short for paying for these radios with the price tag that's on them. So this is what percentage of tax? Is this 0.2%?
The 003 in the name of the title is .003. It's a,
Oh, it's 0.003,
Yes.
0.3%.
yes.
Which equates to about, what, 10.5 million a year, correct?
It's-
3.5 million per,
No, it's not quite, I'd have to, do I have the number right here? Probably do.
because we figured it up, every 1% was equated to 3 million plus, right?
I think we're getting right around 5 million a year. I don't think all sales taxes are on, I think, and the treasurers could speak better to this, but I don't think every sales tax is on all of the same items. And so I think there are differences in how you compute things based on where the sales tax is what it's being taxed on.
So
and
mental
everything.
health is then getting more sales tax for more areas than the,
Possibly. I'm certainly not an expert on how sales tax is collected.
okay. Well, those were my questions. We're going to be finding ourselves scrambling to find funds to pay for the emergency radios, and I see Elon Musk is putting up more satellites, so hopefully we'll have another solution here before too much longer. But anyway, with that, is there no further discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of Resolution 2025-0108 as presented.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second for Resolution 2025-0108. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Takes us down to Commissioner Administrator updates. Mr. Danzel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Earlier this week, I'll start over. At the end of last week and then throughout the beginning of this week, I've been working on the Department of Commerce grant. We've got that, I believe, finalized. It's in review right now, but all of our documentation has gone over and been accepted by the Department of Commerce for the HVAC project out at HAPO. So that was a big undertaking. I got to give a shout out to Teresa and then also Alexandra. I was ill at the beginning of this week, and they really took things on and made it possible for a lot of things to take place. So thank you, Ms. Alvarez and Ms. Vargas. That brings me to my next subject, which is Alexandra, who's been just so great in our office, is going to be leaving us, and so we are going to miss her. She's done just an incredible job and been really great, but also wanted to let the board know that we're out to add for that position, and hopefully we can find someone of Alexandra's caliber. It's going to be very difficult because she was terrific, did a great job in there. So anyway, sorry to see her leave, but wanted to let you know that. I put together, and you'll have this in your email. You don't have to act on it now. It's something for your consideration, a proposal for what we could possibly do with the .09 monies for economic development, similar to what Chelan has done with their economic development money, and it kind of gives it a little bit more rhyme and reason. And then I'd like to take credit for it, but can't. Wes McCart provided the commissioner's office with an idea for a budget policy that I think that would be good for consideration. So I've sent that, we'll send that along. I think I have already sent that along to you, but something for consideration as we move forward and before we get into the budget year, because that gets to be pretty difficult to make any kind of changes before you actually get into it. And with that, again, like I always say, if there's anything that you'd want me to be paying more attention to, or if there's something to dig into, let me know. Otherwise, it's been great. Staff's great to work with here. You've got really just a great group of people in Franklin County. Sometimes I was joking the other day, I don't know if everybody down here knows how great you are, but you are. And so I wanted to say that.
Thank you. Commissioner Baumann?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Immediately after the commissioners' meeting last week, headed up to Chelan for the Washington County's annual conference for the risk pool, and really appreciated a lot of learning there. Felt like I was drinking from a fire hose most of the time. One of the primary things that they did is they put on a kind of a court session that was geared on what is the anatomy of a lawsuit, how it works, and what our responsibilities of a county are, and how that works. And so I really appreciated that. Had Jeff and Mackenzie from our PA's office there, and just really felt like that I learned a tremendous amount, and appreciated what I learned there. Other than that, my meeting schedule has been fairly light. I've fielded quite a number of phone calls, but met with Benton Franklin Health District and had an agenda meeting here with our administrator. And Mr. Chairman, that's my report.
Thank you. Commissioner Mullen?
This last week, I did have some calls about the solar farm, Connell, in opposition of that. Other than that, pretty light week, so thank you.
Wow, already to me. Okay, well, had the agenda meeting earlier this week, and with that, I asked Mr. McCarth to attend the Eastern Washington Council of Governments, which he did, and reported back to me, did an incredible job taking notes. I want to thank him for that. That's a great organization. He was the leader of it for such a long time. I think it's only appropriate, and I don't have the time to drive to Davenport, so he is an excellent source of attendee for our county, and I think I continue to ask him to please stop in, because it's on Fridays and it's on his way home, so it all works out. Had a lady call me by the name of Carol Bland, and she left a really nice phone message. You don't really get praise in this county very often, but usually it's people complaining, but she was very thankful that we used some of the ARPA monies to buy these vehicles for the fire districts. It lowered her insurance by $300. So we're looking at possibly people need to be in touch with their insurance companies to make sure that they know that we have got these apparatuses into these fire districts. Our hospitals have got upgraded ambulances, whatever they can utilize that we have done with this ARPA money to help save themselves in paying of their premiums on this insurance. Do it. Use it, because I didn't even know that was happening, and she was very thankful. And let's see, I finished the book Sacrifice by Dr. James Thorpe, and I got to tell you, it's very eye-popping to see this man, truly a servant of the Lord, trying to help the human race, because what has been inflicted on the human race by this, and I said it a long time ago, plandemic, and that's exactly what it was a plandemic. And these vaccines, when you go from women who are pregnant having miscarriages from 19% to 74%, and one lady had 8 miscarriages. One of them went full term. She almost bled to death. The other one, the child was born and passed away shortly after. And they're attributing it all to these vaccines. The Cleveland Clinic came out with a notice, and I hope they're wrong, that 80% of the people that took the vaccine will be dead within 5 years. That's the Cleveland Clinic. It's going to be pretty revealing to people what, and I attribute the World Health Organization, the World Economic Forum, for the 30 pieces of silver they put the human race in jeopardy. Attended Jimenez's father's funeral. Frank, what a tribute to this country and to our community. This man was an incredible person, cut hair, everybody loved him. He was a very loving person, giving person. And I got to give James and his sons and his family the credit, the justice for what they did. They truly honored their father, and they gave him the justice he deserved in this funeral. It was well attended, overflowing, and the love that was in that room was incredible. I'm just thankful that I took the time to attend it because it is very busy right now, but it really lifted my heart for people in this community and their acknowledgement of a great man, Frank Jimenez. And the last thing I just want to know is we're still waiting for a response from the Attorney General on this unconstitutional pay. Almost 2 years. We haven't had a word one from the Attorney General. No response. And I think we need to do what we can to put the pressure on the Attorney General. Because when the Constitution has been violated, it needs to be noticed so that it never happens again. And we have not even got a confirmation that this has been the case. That's the end of my report. And from that, we'll move down to public comment. Is there anybody in the room for public comment?
Coming again, just in the light of what Commissioner Didier was talking about, I was speaking to a mutual friend, and her husband was killed by the COVID shot. And then I was speaking to another friend who both his wife and another friend died around the same time her husband did after getting the COVID shot. Paula and Curtis, Paula and, all of a sudden I can't think of their last name, but they were good members of our community, and she was a school teacher. And she found out their only daughter was expecting their first grandchild. They were so excited. Both her daughter and her husband were in the military, so they decided to sell their house in a week. She quickly retired, and they moved down to Texas because that's where they were stationed, so that if both their daughter and son-in-law ended up being called to duty, that they could help raise their grandchild. And as soon as their daughter, who was a very healthy military nurse, which you can't get healthier than that, and was expecting, was around doctors and all sorts of medical care, getting physicals every year, passed away after getting the COVID shot. And it's very sad because she's buried in a military cemetery, and included on that is baby Graf, which was her married name. And so I think that Commissioner Didier is correct in his assessment after reading that book, because I really do think a lot of people, it's a time bomb, and I'm very, very worried for those that took the shot. So I really commend him for bringing that to light. So prayers for our community.
Anybody else for public comment? Anybody on the phone? Seeing nobody step forward, I believe we have 2 executive sessions. Jeff? Mr. Briggs?
Yes, we have.
We need to start with the first one, the shorter one, probably.
We could always stack them. Well, yes, let's start with the shorter one, actually, because we'd have different staff, I think, in both. So let's start with the shorter one. That'd be under potential litigation. 4230-110 1I, potential litigation. That would be for approximately 10 minutes. It would be for 10 minutes, rather. That'd be with the board, county administrator, and legal counsel, so myself, Mackenzie, and Mr. San as well.
Okay. And do you want to just stay here, or are we going to go downstairs?
Mr. Chairman, I would say that we need to call out both executive sessions. We can dismiss the staff that doesn't need to be there in the second one, and
Can we do that, Jeff?
We can do that, sure.
Okay, call them both and we'll.
Okay. And the second executive session would be under 4231.10.1G. That'd be evaluation of qualifications of a candidate for public employment. And that, who does the board gets to pick who they want?
It'll be the three commissioners, you, Mr. Briggs, and Margot
Okay.
at the beginning, and then the commissioners will decide whether we want to retain her for the rest of the meeting. But that'll be it.
How long?
We'll go 45 minutes on that one.
Okay.
And that's the start. They said an hour and a half, so, because we got 6 candidates we're going to be evaluating for administrator position. But we'll start at 45, and if we got to extend, I'll come back up to extend.
Okay.
So 55 minutes total so far.
10 for the short meeting?
10 for the short. Okay.
55 minutes. So at this time, we'll recess into executive session at 9:27 by the time we get down there, and so 55 minutes later, we'll come out. Anybody got a calculator there? It'd be like 10:12, or no, 10:22. It'd be 27. It'll be 10:22. 10:22. We've come out of executive session with no decisions being made. We're going to extend for 20 more minutes at this time at the same second executive session, RCW. So we'll go into executive session at 10:28, come out at 10:48.
Right, Mr. Commissioner. Gentlemen, we're back. Do you guys need some espresso or? Yes, please.
Right here.
Did you ever hear the one about, we gotta go back in, I'll tell it another time, but I love like Frank Sinatra and Don Rickles, you know, where, anyway, I'll tell you about it. And it's worthwhile.
All right, we're back from executive session with no decisions being made. And we're back into the open public meeting, so I ask the commissioners for their input as far as the candidates and where you would like to go from here. Anybody want to start? I'll have to say that there are 6 good candidates from all over the United States.
Yes, they're all, they're all very good applications. I am very pleased with Mr. Danzel and his willingness to work, and it seems like we all get along pretty good with him, and I think it's a very good fit. So that's my comment.
I guess my thought is, after going through that and hearing some of that, I think that I would like to have, maybe postpone anything until next week. Give it a chance to take some of that information that we just learned and digest it a little bit for a week, do a little bit more research and reading potentially, and I do appreciate Commissioner Mullins' comment. Mr. Danzel has been doing us a fine job, and I do appreciate that.
I have to agree, and we'll do that. We'll come back next week with more discussion on this topic as far as narrowing down these candidates. Whether they'll all still be available or not, I don't know. But we definitely have an administrator, an interim administrator at this time that's doing a fantastic job. So I will agree that we'll postpone this till next week for our decision as far as narrowing it or picking from it. So at this time, we are at the point of the meeting for public comment. Is there anybody? No, we've already done public comment. We're in executive session. So at this time, I will adjourn the meeting and I will open our workshop. And our workshop is of one topic today. So I will ask for the approval of the workshop agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I would move for approval of the workshop agenda with one item, comprehensive plan update by our planner, Mr. Wes McCart.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So with that, I'll open it up for public comment for the workshop comprehensive plan update. Is there anybody for public comment? Anybody on the phone? No. With nobody for public comment, I'll turn it over to Mr. McCart.
Thank you, Commissioner. So we're here today to talk about the comprehensive plan update cycle. With me is Nicole Stickney with AHBL. She is leading the team for our consultant to do this project. So I'm going to turn it over to her, and this is meant to be very interactive. Please, if you have questions as we go along, feel free to interrupt us. We're looking for your input and guidance as we move through this process and your ideas. And as we go on, this is going to be a good probably 18-month project or thereabouts. So as we go along, we'll try and keep you updated. But anytime you have input, we would welcome that input, as we would from any citizen calls you get. We'd be more than happy to take their calls, answer questions, or take their input as we go. So I'm going to turn it over to Nicole.
With that, Mr. McCart, I'd like to just reiterate what you just said so the public heard it well.
Okay.
If you have any input on the comprehensive plan update, phone in to our planning and building department and give your thoughts, correct?
They can do that. They can email it. We're going to have a website. Nicole will probably touch on a little bit here in just a minute. We'll have lots of different ways. We're going to do some public meetings too. So we'll get into all of that.
Go to the
in just a
Franklin
minute.
County website, look up planning and building, call that number.
Okay, thank you. Nicole?
Welcome,
Great,
Nicole.
thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity, first of all, to work on this project for you. We've really enjoyed our work with the county in the past, working on a previous periodic update and a number of changes to your development regulations, and also some on-call planning work helping you with your permit processing. So it's a delight to be back, and I'm very excited about this project. Once again, my name's Nicole Stickney. I'm an associate principal at AHBL, and I'm just going to walk through this process, just kind of give you an outline of what's expected, so that we can complete this project, which is super important for the future of the county. Thank you. All right, good.
This way.
Thank you. So in terms of some of the high points that we hope to touch today, we want to make sure it's clear what the intent of the comprehensive plan update is. We'll talk about the purposes of this endeavor. We're going to review in short some of the recent legislative changes that have occurred, the ones that are going to be the most compelling in terms of the work that needs to be done around that. We're going to outline some of the opportunities for public input, which is a huge and crucial part of this process. Answer your questions as well. So this, to be clear, is a periodic update of the comprehensive plan. It is required by the state's Growth Management Act. Your comprehensive plan was adopted in 2008, and then we did an update in 2018. They've changed the way that the sequencing cycle goes, so moving forward, this will be an effort that we'll do every 10 years, but it has been more of like an 8-year cycle in the past. Franklin County has been planning under the Growth Management Act for some time now, and is at a higher population, which we'll get to, certainly than when you started. The advent of GMA was in 1990, so Growth Management Act has been around for a while. It has really changed in terms of a lot of the scope and details that are involved, and so I'll be going over some of those changes. One of the things that we need to do through this update effort is to confirm that we have sufficient urban growth areas for future growth of the incorporated cities in Franklin County. Being that we only have 4 cities in Franklin County and only 2 are of substantial size, it's really going to be, I think, a pretty simple effort. And as you may recall, not too long ago, Pasco did expand their urban growth area to the north by quite a few, by quite a lot of acres. And so we might be looking at some adjustments, but we'll also need to confirm that there is enough capacity there for the growth looking 20 years into the future. So every time we do a periodic update, we're always looking at the next 20 years and looking at the expected population growth. We'll also be certain to conform to legal requirements and also point those out to you as we go along. I've worked with many different municipalities over the last couple of years on some of these updates, and they always appreciate when we tell them, hey, this is something we recommend and it's a best practice, versus I want to highlight this for you. This is according to a specific RCW or WAC, and give that guidance. So we can always help you kind of decipher between what's optional and what's passed down to you as a mandate or requirement. We will also be updating our population forecasts and studying and addressing emerging issues. Now, in terms of a comprehensive plan, as you may recall, it establishes what we would call a blueprint or a roadmap for the county's development and future. Whenever we do a comprehensive plan update, we're always looking 20 years out to the future. Now, amendments can be done in an annual cycle to a comprehensive plan. So in this way, it's a living document and something that can be modified as need be. But a periodic update is unique in that it's really opening up the entire plan for study and review and for that policy work. So we're taking more of a deep dive as compared to what an annual amendment might look like if the county were to do one. When we look out 20 years, it's a daunting task. The future is uncertain. When we think about today, it's 2025. You think about 20 years ago, 2005, you might just pause for a minute and reflect about what the world looked like then and what the technology was then and what the concerns about the future were at that time. You might even think about how old you were and where you lived and what you were doing. And that gives you kind of I think a perspective looking back to think about how 20 years time is a lot of time, but it's also a relatively short period of time, depending on your perspective and maybe what you're thinking about. So looking 20 years into the future, we're going from 2026 to 2046. The world is going to change quite a bit, and we need to do our best effort to think forward and plan for the future here. Of course, the comprehensive plan guides for the physical development of the community. And this is the basis for a number of decisions. So it's the basis for any amendments you make to your development code through your zoning and division of land ordinances. This also helps drive decisions made on your capital facilities, your economic development efforts, how you protect the environment, and so forth. I also wanted to add that as a part of this effort, we are not only looking at updating the comprehensive plan, but we also need to look at the codes and the ordinances that Franklin County has in the books. It's important that we make sure that we update those as well, because there is legislation out there that says when you do a periodic update, you shall also look at your development codes and make a number of changes to conform to state law, but also just the act of updating a comprehensive plan is just naturally a driver to looking at your development codes to make sure that everything is in check and that they are not in conflict with one another. So it's kind of a natural outspring of the work. There's also your critical areas ordinance, which has been updated pretty recently. We did that about the same time that we did the update to the shoreline management program. So you might remember that there were some changes made for that recently. There might be some additional adjustments that need to be made there. Now this slide is just an opportunity for, this is for kind of for public knowledge to understand who decides what the plan says. How do we come up with this? And there's a couple of different tiers, and there's a framework here that I just want to explain very briefly. So the Growth Management Act, as we know, is applicable across the state of Washington. Not every county is fully planning, as they say. Some counties that have a smaller population, they just have to look at their resource areas, and they don't have to do a full-blown comprehensive plan. Franklin County is a fully planning county, so we're in it for all of the different aspects that growth management requires. One of the components that's also important is the countywide planning policies. Now, those are set at the county, so that'll be part of the work that'll be coming up in the months to come. We will bring to you a proposed resolution at some point where we have maybe some revisions to these countywide planning policies. First, there's staff work to be done. We have to coordinate with the other jurisdictions and do an analysis, which you've already started, to see what might need to be changed to the countywide planning policies. You had some countywide planning policies first adopted in '93. You updated them during the last periodic cycle, but that was the first change to them. And so that was a pretty dramatic change. There will be more changes I expect going forward, in particular distributing out population counts and things like that for the jurisdictions, because they also have to plan under these countywide planning policies. But it shouldn't be as transformative as it was going from the 93 version to the last version. And then finally, our local comprehensive plan will be the output of all of this local effort and decision-making and choices. Now, all of this is kind of these different tiers of different responsibilities and direction that we have. But I also want to emphasize just how important these countywide planning policies are, because we'll be coming to with some proposals pretty soon. This has to do, or it can be used a lot for coordination, consistency, and assuring alignment between what the county is doing and the jurisdictions, in particular Pasco. So we want to make sure we keep a close eye on all of that. And moving along, I want to be respectful of your time, but I want to make sure that I get enough detail in here that we're doing a good job of showcasing kind of what's going to happen here. This is just a graphic showing the different elements or chapters of the comprehensive plan for Franklin County. The way that we have organized it right now is, you'll notice there's a land use element, and then we have two sub-elements. One is known as the rural lands sub-element, and another one is called the resource lands sub-element. So those are all components of land use. You also have a chapter on the natural environment, one on transportation and circulation, and so on and so forth. One thing that you do not see here is parks and recreation. That topic is addressed in the capital facilities element, but the county does not own or operate parks, so that's a really kind of minimal discussion there. Historic and cultural resources, that is something that the county has planned for in the past. It is not a GMA requirement, so I wanted to be clear about that. And likewise, economic development is something that the county has decided to include in the past in the comprehensive plan. We know that it continues to be super important. That is not a GMA requirement, however, so I just wanted to be very clear about that.
Question, Nicole?
Yes.
I've received some emails from residents of Connell opposing the solar project under utilities. Do we have that call in our county, or is that mandated by the state that we have to follow their guidelines?
There's going to be a hearing taking place next week before the Planning Commission on the matter. It is a quasi-judicial action, so it is separate, and it's subject to the appearance of fairness doctrine and other important aspects that I just want to be very clear about in terms of that project level item. But to answer your question about the policy side of things, there's a lot I can share about these types of facilities and where state law is right now in terms of how these can be approved. Taking a broader look at things like solar farms, wind farms, these can be approved by the governor and not by local governments.
That's my concern. These people are going to reach out to us. They're very opposed to it. So they need to be at that planning and
Yes, the Planning Commission meeting will take
Meeting.
place next week, and we would invite people to come and speak
What-
either in
what's the-
favor or in opposition.
what's the date and the time of that meeting?
That'll be Tuesday evening, so that's April 8th, and the meeting starts at
6 PM.
Okay.
And Commissioners, I would, anyone who calls you, I would very much encourage you not to have a conversation with them. You're
Just
not
give them the
supposed to-
meeting name? I can
Give them
that
the information,
Yeah.
come to the hearing, they
I
can
haven't
email
responded.
comments in.
Yeah.
We just want to make sure that we don't put you in a bad spot when we bring this project to you for your
I
closed
appreciate
record
that.
hearings.
But I just want to make sure that their voice is heard. So I can give them the information of the date and the time of this meeting, and it's held right here in this commissioner room,
Yes.
correct?
And they can also send comments in via email.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I haven't interacted with them at all. I just read their email.
Okay.
yeah.
And as far as the policies in the comprehensive plan related to utilities, you do want to have policies like, do we encourage, having fiber so that folks can hook up to the internet, especially with precision ag out there now. We don't want to forget that we need the ability to have that throughout the county. Those are general policies you want to have, and Nicole is correct, FSEC and the governor have a process to circumvent citing of certain projects that would request to go that direction. However, there is ongoing legislation back and forth over our ability to still have a dictate on what happens in our county. So having those policies in place that guide us the best we can is a good situation. And that's where we want to be. And if the governor chooses to use the FSEC and override local control, that's an issue we have to deal with at the legislative level. But we still can have good code for our people as we see fit.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well stated.
Yeah, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for that question, because that does highlight how important a comprehensive plan is in terms
Yes.
of future decision-making on projects and permits and whatnot. Okay.
Would it be out of our norm to put this out on our Franklin County website, that this meeting is broadcasted? Can we do that? Can we advertise this, or is it only upon request of the information do we give it?
No, it's going to be available, I believe, later today. If you go to the website and you go to the Planning Commission agendas, it'll be right there along with the staff report, and
Okay.
there's a lot of material
Yeah.
available, so it can be reviewed in time.
And it is also on the cover page when you walk to the Franklin County website where it has the calendar on April 8th. They added that
Okay.
yesterday afternoon.
Thank you.
So
The comprehensive plan does a lot of different things, but two items I wanted to highlight here. We set a level of service standards for county facilities and how to pay for them. This is one area where I think we can really kind of level up, because the last comprehensive plan, I was given the direction, this is going to be a minimal update. We need to really keep it down to what is absolutely required. And there were some areas where we could have done more work in terms of making sure that the capital facilities plan was integrated with the rest of the plan and things like that. It was approved and we went forward with everything, but I think that this time we do need to really focus in on those topics in a more detailed way. And then the other aspect here is we need to balance the public interests and bridge the gap of where we are and where we want to go as a county, so we can really have these broad conversations through this process. A few things I want to highlight that will be new with this update. I'm going to start with the second bullet. It's a little easier. The wildland-urban interface, that has to do with protection of our community, people and property when as relates to wildfires. Wildfires are something that the state is asking us to really look into and looking at measures to, as I said, make those protections. So we'll probably have some policies in the land use element or those related sub-elements to that.
And if I might add, so the hazard mitigation plan that's being updated by the emergency management right now, that plays right in with this, what we're required to do here in this element. We are required to have things in the hazard mitigation plan as they tie and coordinate with our comprehensive plan. So I've already been in contact with them to make sure we get coordination there.
Mr. Denzel.
So I understand the WUI, the wildland urban interface up in forested places. Where is the WUI here?
Well, it's where you have open spaces and then development that's occurring. So we know that even the shrub steppe environment or dry land areas where we don't see a lot of trees, that can still be subject to fires. You think? That's not classified. It is. Wildland, yep. Yeah. So I don't know how it compares in severity or risk factor to areas that have more, fuel essentially.
Just was working off of the United States Forest Service plans. That's where the term came from, and so that mainly pertains to like the Forest Service land or forest. So I was curious just seeing the terminology used on a state planning document. Thank you.
I believe it is, yes. So we'll confirm that and see what that's going to look like. There's also a building code component to all of this too, but it does need to be addressed in the comprehensive plan. So it's one of our topics.
Are,
As a new item.
question, are we going to address the federal government regulations on acreage? Once it hits amount of acreage burning, then the federal dollars start coming in. So instead of fighting fire, we manage fire, it looks like to me in this state. We manage it to get to that level of catastrophe so the federal dollars will come in. I witnessed it up there in Asotin where I have 160 acres and they let it burn right through my property. It didn't burn everything. It just went through there and they managed it to burn through there so they could get to the acreage. We have got to address this problem because we're not fighting fire, we're managing fires.
So this is where I think your policies that we come up with for this section are going to be vital, and why I think it's so important that the commissioners also pay attention to the hazard mitigation plan, because that has a lot of your, what I'm going to say, on-the-ground elements when you do have a natural disaster, not just fire, but some of the other natural disasters we could be hit with. Even heavy winds can be a large player in how do we deal with, disaster, buildings that might collapse in the wind or, God forbid, but other issues that might occur. So.
Mr. Chair,
Mr.
would
Ballard.
certainly appreciate your guidance through that, that hazard mitigation plan that they're working on now.
Yeah, I've tried to connect with emergency management. I need to remind them they need to send me copies of that plan, but they're very well aware that that needs to coordinate with the policies we develop here. Fortunately, that is a separate process, but the bill that passed a couple of years ago, 1181, specifically requires elements be addressed in our plans, and that can be done most efficiently through the hazard mitigation plan. That keeps everybody on the same page, but we'll have policies that will have to point that direction, so.
The next item I wanted to mention was for transportation. The state is now requiring us to look into multimodal levels of service. So what this has to do with is really non-motorized transportation. So in the past, we've had a level of service standards for our transportation facilities. Think about road corridors and throughput, or specific intersections and what kind of level of service we're looking for, so that we know when improvements need to be made or mitigation might be triggered by new development that's proposed. But now we need to be even broader and be looking at bicycle, pedestrian amenities, things like that. So you might ask, how does that relate to the county as a whole with the road system? And we'll need to do some more investigation in that to really figure out what is appropriate for the county, because usually it's in more dense areas, so you would have sidewalks and bike facilities and things like that. But we will be working with the transportation sub-consultant through those topics.
I have a comment on that, because you'd think there would be substantial impacts with the amount of impervious surface that would be increased there, but that's just a thought. We're talking about adding a bike lane to county roads, I mean.
We do have to take that into consideration on a landscape level. I've seen other counties run into that issue with stormwater runoff and how that's happening. So there is a tie. One of the things the Growth Management, and the Planning Enabling Act that started a precursor, is that we have to balance all of these elements. So that's part of the song and dance that we get to do as we move along this process. They got how many elements now total? I think there's 14 different elements, if I remember right, that we have to balance. Property rights being one of them, environmental equity being another one. So just to kind of go to the extremes.
Yeah, I think we're actually up to 15 goals now.
Okay, sorry.
Well, and they
Hard to keep track.
keep adding more, yes.
It's getting a little bit scary because when you say we have to balance social justice in our planning, that is such a opinionated thing of what does that mean. As we go through this, it'll be my hope that we can, whatever we put in it, that we can, trying to think of how to describe it, of say what we mean when we say that, because stuff gets so broad that it can be subject to whoever is looking at it, their interpretation, and unless we interpret it, what we're saying, it gets pretty scary. That's as a developer myself, that's one of the the most difficult thing to do when you develop anything is try to develop somebody's opinion, and then somebody changes jobs or whatever, and now you've got a new opinion, and then you're trying to, and so as we go through this, trying to, lay out what we mean when we say what we're saying. I don't know, it's a bad way of describing it, but it's, now you're trying to make 15 things line up, and it's kind of hard.
This, especially your comprehensive plan policies, there's a lot of language that will be, there's a lot of background information that gets put in the comprehensive plan. But when it comes right down to it, your goals and your policies are your true plan. And that's where the words that are on the page in those policies and goals need to be wordsmithed very carefully, so that we are pulling across your intent as the legislative body, representing all the people here in Franklin County, what exactly we mean. So we may go back and forth. Like I said, we'll be sharing this information as we go along the process. We welcome your input. If for some reason you think a word we use in a policy is not the appropriate word to use, we welcome that input, because, we can look at it through one set of eyes. You're going to look at it through another. Somebody else is going to look through another. But let's make sure we're doing, somebody's not trying to reinterpret what we do in this work 2 or 3 years down the line.
Mr. Danzel.
I think this is important for the board, so I hate to jump in here, but I am worried about the wildland-urban interface, and as it pertains to our resource lands, ag lands of long-term commercial significance. My question is if they're going to be layered over those, because I've seen that used before. And then the second thing would be that when you determine that they're a wildland-urban interface, and they're living in a wildland-urban interface, we've had experiences where we're originally from, it's next to impossible for those people to get insured. They can't find insurance because the insurance companies will not insure them in an area that they deem is higher than likely for a fire possibility.
Well, that's
So I think we ought to be very careful when doing that, and definitely not layer it on top of our ag lands, because I've also seen, in my belief, where it's been used to try to protect the land from farmers. And that seems backwards to what I think the Board of Commissioners is trying to accomplish here.
Thank you.
But-
We'll be sure to look into those details. In terms of tribal participation in planning, there have been modifications made to the Growth Management Act. And it says that basically if a tribe approaches the county and says, we want to participate in your planning on an ongoing basis, there's a process for a memorandum of understanding. That's only triggered if that actually occurs. So I just wanted to be very clear about that, because there's some misconceptions that you have to have an MOU with every tribe, and that's just not the case. So I wanted to be clear on that. And now I'm going to jump up to the climate change element.
Are we required to have that if they say so? If the tribe says we want to have input, are we required to do that?
Yes, sir, that's what the GMA says. And there is a whole mediation process through Commerce if we need that kind of assistance. So I haven't seen that happen with some of the recent comprehensive plan updates that I've done, but I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that, that factor.
I'm disappointed, frustrated, and concerned that the Growth Management Act is supposed to be our best friend, and I have yet to see any example of that being the case. It has become an obstacle to local jurisdictions of doing what the local community is trying to do, has asked to be done, and it's becoming an obstacle. And while that's frustrating, I recognize right now that we are required to adhere to it, and I appreciate that. But as much as we can put our local DNA into it, I want to the utmost of our ability.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I do take my job very seriously in trying to help you navigate through that process. It does feel very different to be a planner now than 10, 15, 20 years ago in the state of Washington with all of this. And so I try to be very upfront and realistic about what the requirements are, but I also have a lot of understanding and compassion for people who are frustrated with the process.
It seems to be something that it was done with the best of intentions and has grown into something that is extraordinarily expensive and not helpful to the local jurisdictions.
And I have a question with that too, on the tribal participation. Is that the tribes that were native to this area, or is that any tribe within the state of Washington?
As far as I understand it, and the way I always explain it to younger planners, is that tribes can have different interests for different purposes. So I'm not clear on that. You know, there's certain tribes that have interests in groundwater and salmon. And that may be local, that may not be. There's also tribes that have different interests in cultural resources that can be in the ground. There's different tribes that have different interests in economic aspects. So I'm uncertain of that.
Well, then my question is, because we have a confrontation going on right now within our county as far as who has jurisdiction over here where that casino is going to be built. And that's going to the federal level to be determined. So I just want to make sure that we only deal with who we have to deal with instead of the whole state.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, and if I might, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Baumann, to kind of address your concern a little bit, I think that's where the balancing act of the different elements that we're required to do. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to have this workshop is, you know, what is of highest importance? And, you know, even though all the policies that we put in the comprehensive plan are on equal footing, sometimes the order in which you put them kind of shows your intent. And we can emphasize certain policies over other policies while still balancing the requirements of the act. So, you know, we're going to try and give it as much local flavor as we possibly can while still meeting the state mandates.
And I appreciate that. That's really what I was trying to say. You said it much more articulately than I did. It just, you know, what I believe started out with the best of intentions as somewhat of a grant program to assist, you know, good planning efforts has now come to a, you know, 15 criteria that thou shalt do or else. And I don't like that approach to local government. It takes the authority away from where it was intended to be.
All right. Well stated. And thank you, Wes, for being down there to help us through this. We feel at ease with you here.
So this slide and the next one really covers all these new things. And the next slide, I'm going to talk about housing. But before I leave this slide, I wanted to talk about the climate change element.
We don't have enough time for that climate change.
All right.
I'm just kidding.
I will limit my remarks to this at this point. We're looking into it. There is grant money that the state has made available. There are only a handful of counties that have to plan under House Bill 1181. Franklin County is one of them because we were barely over the threshold from the legislation in terms of population density and other aspects. What concerns me is that we're in the first group of communities that need to do this work, and there's only interim guidance out, and it looks very difficult.
That's because it is.
So I'm going to tell you that I'm going to turn this table around on this issue just a little bit and saying sometimes it's really bad to go first. Sometimes it's really good to go first. I really want to approach this as it's good to go first because we're going to set the bar where we want to set the bar and see where it goes from there.
Thank you.
All right, and then
Yes, it is.
housing is a huge topic right now across the state. We are in a statewide housing crisis in terms of affordability and supply. Because of this, the legislature has found that a lot of changes needed to be made to the Growth Management Act, and so they've put forth a series of bills, and now we're going to have to go through each of those and make sure that we are doing additional work to plan around those requirements and address those policies. So here's what I wanted you to know. So first, there's going to be, and some of it's very helpful, there's some deregulation that's going to occur. For example, accessory dwelling units, things like that. There's some limitations on what local governments can require, which might actually be helpful in terms of providing more flexibility. On the other hand, there's also some limitations that they have, things that you might want to be able to regulate that you're going to lose that local control over. So I just want to be very upfront about that. One of the things we'll need to do is create for Franklin County and the municipalities through the countywide planning policies, detailed allocations for housing needs. We need to do a supply analysis according to different income bands to show that we are not precluding housing from affordable housing to be able to be built locally to meet those different needs, and also to meet emergency housing needs. So this is going to look like what can we ensure that can be developed, even if it requires a subsidy, even if it's, not private development, but we need to make sure that we have the stage set so that somebody could reasonably do a project to provide that low-income housing and extremely low-income housing. So there's actually going to be numbers tied to each community that says, here's what you have to build at, or be able to build at, and you have to show that you have that land capacity. It's really interesting. This is all based on area median income, and so they have these different levels of income levels that we need to make sure that we are addressing in terms of affordability. And I say this every time, cities and counties don't build houses. That's not what we do. That's not the business. But we need to make sure that we have, according to the state, that capacity and that opportunity for it to be built, whether it's private market-based housing or with interventions. So it's tricky. Now, one thing I can tell you that makes these numbers kind of easier is that our area median income in Franklin, Benton County area for the last year is right about 100,000. So that makes these numbers really easy to think about. So an extremely low-income household would typically be 30,000 or less per year, looking at the chart to the right. So that's forthcoming, and we'll be working through all of those details.
Is that full-time residents or out here in the blocks, we have seasonal residents for?
Our housing element will need to look at those factors, and we will need to see what the legislation addresses about, those aspects. We also have incarcerated persons in Connell.
I believe, Mr. Chairman, it's a combination of both, and we have to address both. Knowing full well that it's in, and we've talked about it, especially with the city of Connell, where they do have that incarcerated population, are they included, are they not included? And this is where the countywide planning policies will really come into effect, as we're working through the different municipalities, in this case, mainly Connell and Pasco. A lot of these facilities, like warming shelters, require the ability to have adequate septic and water and heat and, opportunities for some of those facilities to exist outside of an urban area or urban growth area, or even a landward that might have sewage ability is very limited. So, we're gonna have to balance that as we balance what the size of the UGAs are and who's taking what part of what population, so that we can make sure that as a county as a whole, we're addressing what we're required to here.
Two other topics that go along with housing are equity measures and consideration of racially disparate impacts. So there are specific requirements that come into play in terms of looking at these measures of equity and also looking at past potential harms to certain populations due to policies in the past or actions in the past. What this looks like typically is I'll look to see if there's any record of racially prohibitive covenants from, say, the 50s or 60s before the Fair Housing Act became law, and maybe we address those, or maybe we'll talk a little bit about how Pasco was a sundown town. And I don't know too much about that, but we can look at that kind of academic work and hopefully just put that in there and satisfy those requirements fairly quickly. They're kind of asking for a lot of academic work over in King County in particular, but that's because they put that in their countywide planning policies. So we'll have to set out very specifically in our local countywide planning policies what the minimum requirement is to meet those state mandates. All right. In terms of our update timeline, this just gives you a quick look at the progression. I just want to move on because I also have some demographic information I want to share. Before I move on to that, the public input is super important. You recently adopted through resolution your county public participation plan. Thank you. That also, by resolution, announced the beginning of the update, and that's good so that everybody can know that this process has started. What we're going to do is we're going to have an email list, as we've used in the past, to keep interested people apprised of what's going on through the process. We did that for the S&P update. We did that for the last comprehensive plan periodic update, and we'll do that again. We had an update website previously. It was like a state-hosted website called EasyView. We're leveling up. Through my company, we use a platform called Social Pinpoints. We're going to host a project page on that platform. It's a lot more attractive. It'll be a great way to be able to interact with the public, provide documents, meeting announcements. We can also conduct surveys via that platform. We'll be doing, I believe, some direct mailings, public notices. We're going to do workshops in several different locations so that it's not just all here locally, but we want to make sure that we're going out to the other parts of the county. People can make comments in a variety of ways. We'll make sure we have comment forms available. They can always contact staff, consultants. This is a legislative process, so any discussion is fair game. And of course, this is going to be processed through the Planning Commission and then the Board of County Commissioners. We can skip this slide, I think. I wanted to show you this population chart. It's similar to what I brought some years back, but now it has, obviously it goes out further to current time. I think it's so interesting to look at how population has changed in the state versus Franklin County and see how things have kind of changed in terms of pace. So Franklin County is plotted on the left y-axis. State of Washington is plotted on the right y-axis. And it just kind of shows that as we go through the decades, they really did trend together until about the year 2000, and then Franklin County just really became a place for a lot of concentrated growth as compared to what was happening statewide in terms of their trajectory. So I just think that's so interesting just to see that change. And then this next slide shows, just so you can compare how we stack up with other counties, the population change over the 10-year period, 2014 to 2024. You can see the state of Washington bars in green, and we have all the different counties showing. Ferry County, Columbia County, they lost population. Soton, Okanagan, they're among the slowest growing. Franklin County is second now only to Clark County. So I think we were in the first position previously, but we've gone up by 18% in population over that 10-year period. The statewide increase was 15%. This is just a bar chart showing for you the different communities that make up Franklin County, and you can see the portion of unincorporated Franklin County, which is the lowest part of the bar in the bar charts. And you can see that that is growing. You can also see the changes in Pasco, which is at the top. One thing I want to emphasize is that we need to be very clear about what the role of annexations is in terms of this population changes, and also property taxation and assessed value and all of those types of things. We want to take a good look at all of that as we move forward. The next slide shows population projections. So we always are using the Office of Financial Management projections that they provide for these purposes of the Growth Management Act and comprehensive planning. They come out with new projections every 5 years. So I've plotted here the group of projections from 2012, 2017, and the most recent set, which was from 2022. They always have a high, medium, and low estimate, and those are the different scenarios that local communities can choose to plan under, depending on kind of where you feel like is most accurate for your local community. But the demographers put this together, and usually the medium series or mid is the one to go with. And the next slide, it looks a little less cluttered there. It just shows the medium projection as opposed to actual growth. So I use different colors for 2010 and 2020 because those are census years. The other years are estimates. And you can see that we really do trend pretty well with this medium projection. So in my guess, we'll probably want to continue going with that, but that'll be addressed in the countywide planning policies. Just a quick preview of what the website will look like. We'll go live here pretty soon with it. And we want to have a link from the main webpage.
Oh.
Yeah, it'll be linked so you don't have to know that full URL, but that's essentially where it'll live.
Yeah, we're going to make sure that it's out on our webpage in very front and center, so that you can click on it right there, and it'll take you to the link, so that you won't even really know as a user that you're going to a different site. It'll just be right there.
Could I offer a suggestion? We pay the expense of putting it in the Connell Graphic, which is our official newspaper, along with the meeting for the solar.
I actually think that's required, right?
Yes.
Oh.
It's
good
already
deal.
been, the meeting for next week has already been published.
In the Connell Graphic.
Yes, it has.
Excellent.
Yes, and we do have grant money for this periodic update cycle and also for the climate change element. So I'll be working with Wes to see, about maybe even putting ads in the paper, something that's more attractive and kind of leveling up. The other thing I was going to mention for the website is that any of those types of materials, like a newspaper ad or a flyer, we use QR codes so that people don't have to type in the addresses. They can just get right to it.
We're also going to be very considerate of folks that are out in the rural area, busy during the summer, farming, whatever they might be doing, construction, and trying to make sure that we're reaching those folks, or folks that, some of the folks here, we have some different language barriers, to make sure we're doing our best job to make sure that we're accommodating that. And also, we've got some people that aren't necessarily as tech savvy as others, and we want to make sure that they still have the opportunity. Some of us still like pencil and paper, or ink and paper versus the internet. So, we want to make sure that we can accommodate all of that. Yes, exactly.
So if we do have grant money, a suggestion would be to run some radio ads on KONA 610. Farmers listen to that religiously, and maybe some any other stations. I know there's one Latino station that would probably be very good to advertise on.
Oh, to your point,
Can we do that
we can look into that for sure and see what the
if we have grant money available?
Yeah, exactly. I usually will always send out a press release just to hope that they put that information out anyways. But yes, we'll see if we get any traction with that. And then thank you for your point about languages. So we know that there is a substantial Hispanic population, Spanish-speaking population. The website that I showed you, it has a Google Translate button, yes. So it's not a perfect translation. It's not, legally it's not an interpretation, but it does do a computer-based translation. So we have all of that material that is on that website, not necessarily the documents that are linked, that would be separate, but we are going to make sure that we're doing that as part of our efforts. In the past, we always would make sure that we had a staff member at meetings that could help with Spanish speakers that came. We didn't have opportunity for that last time. We didn't have anybody show up that needed that, but we'll be talking about that as well. And then lastly, when we do a survey, the survey will also be in Spanish.
Yes, Mr. Denzel.
I believe the chairman was kind of more asking about, since there's going to be impacts on farmers and folks in rural areas, that we take the marketing and advertising to where they are going to hear it the most, if I'm getting you right.
Yes, an
And you're
attractor
thinking-
with the
yeah.
radio.
So we had a problem with that, and we have problems with that in all areas of the state of Washington with planning. So I would recommend some way of outreach specifically to the farmers, and Wes, I know that you'll be able to do that. But I think that's what you were going for, correct? Yeah.
We haven't landed on any particular mechanism right now. We've even discussed sending postcards to some of the very outlying folks that
That'd be excellent, too.
might do that. Again, we're constrained by what budget we have, but we're going to try and use that as efficiently as we can to get out to everybody.
Every resident gets a Connell graphic in the rural area. An insert, when you unfold it, would fall out. That would be a great way. An insert into the Connell graphic.
Yeah, I was going to send an email last week to ask about that, but it hasn't gone out yet. But that was already, identified as
Excellent.
as an objective. So this last slide is just if you had any follow-on questions for me, some ideas I had about conversation topics. But yes, we're just happy to hear any other thoughts you have at this point as we move forward with our next steps.
Questions, commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I did write a number of things down here. Would you speak just a little bit more to the quasi-judicial nature of the Connell Solar project that's coming? So I had seen, I'm not even sure where, but I had seen that there was going to be a meeting at the courthouse. And this is months and months ago. And so I had responded to what I'd seen, and I said, tell me more, and I identified myself as a commissioner. I don't believe there's any conflict there of me looking for, available information.
What I can say about that is that it's a quasi-judicial process, so it is it has to do with legal property rights of the property owner and due process. And so since you will be, we expect, looking at the permit application in a closed record public hearing, you would be required to disclose any ex parte communications that you received as part of this process. Just to explain a little bit about what we did a SEPA notice of consultation back in December, putting information out about the project initially, received some comments back at that time. We had said that there was going to be a public hearing and that it would be noticed separately. And then that did occur here recently. We noticed our public hearing, which is coming up soon, and we also issued a SEPA determination of non-significance for the project. So all of those requirements have been met.
Okay, thank you.
So if I might add just a little bit, commissioners, haven't been a commissioner myself in the past. Any comments that you receive related to this topic, it's best if you try not to dive into what's going on too deep. We will be supplying the entire record for you. I'll have that available as soon as we get done with the hearing and get it scheduled. I'll give you the entire record so that you can review all of that information. But if you get any constituents that really want to make a comment on that, they really need to be pointed towards the planning department and the planning commission at this point, so that we can and even after the planning commission has their meeting and makes their recommendation, you need to avoid any appearance of fairness.
Sure.
Being unfair and being balanced. So. Again, I would encourage you to point them our direction. I will make sure that any comments that we get are included in the file. Once the hearing is closed and the decision is made, or a recommendation is made by the Planning Commission, comments that come in afterwards, unless they're already have commented on the record, you can't consider those comments. You shouldn't consider those comments, and you shouldn't be taking those comments. Again, if you direct them our direction, we can gather all that up so that you're making a very, you're literally sitting as a judge in this role and a closed record hearing, and I would hope that you would, basically, this is one of those times when you kind of have to tell the public, sorry, you can't talk to me. I need you to send you somebody else so that I can be fair in my ruling when it comes in front of me.
And I appreciate that. I haven't received any comments. The questions that I have is, what's the impact of this going to be to our community? Is there going to be a tax impact, infrastructure? That's just some of the stuff that I'm curious about, but I don't have any of that information. So the record will provide that, I believe.
The record will provide whatever folks have put into the record, sir. I can't say that it'll answer all of your questions, but you'll have the opportunity in the closed record hearing to discuss any of the concerns that are in the record.
I appreciate that.
And I might add, that is a closed record hearing, not an open public hearing, so it will be closed to the public at that time, correct?
So their chance for the public to comment needs to be between now
Yes.
and the hearing we have at the Planning Commission
Yes.
next Tuesday on April 8th at 6 p.m. If they want to put comments in, now's the time to do that.
Yes.
Or at that hearing is the time to do that. From that point on, the record is closed and you can only discuss what's in the record.
Exactly.
Appreciate that. On the outreach for our comprehensive plan, not sure exactly what that should look like. I've been involved in going to community outreach programs for a long time, and some of them are done poorly, some of them are done excellently, and would encourage that we do a robust and as complete as we can. I know that that's your plan already. In appreciating that farmers right now there's not enough hours in the day, and January 15th there's probably going to be some time to visit. So maybe designing something in both North County and South County. I don't know if we need to do 3 in Connell and 3 in Pasco. I don't want to design it for you, but I would just encourage us to do that very robustly and do an actual outreach. Because there's times when the outreach effort is very helpful, and there's been times when I didn't even know about it, and I'm pretty engaged in processes locally. So another question, kind of pivoting just a little bit, we've talked about it in brief, an economic development plan. I'd visited with you, Mr. McCart, just briefly about a template that I had looked at out of Chelan County about potentially doing something similar to what they have. Is that something that's helpful if we were to work on that and adopt in advance of the comp plan, and so that the comp plan can be guided somewhat by that process? Or is this something that we should do in parallel with and integrate into?
So I'm aware that you have some economic policies in place right now in the current comprehensive plan, and I would encourage you to use what we have to get your economic development plan done, tailored to the county as soon as possible. On the flip side of that, the economic development plan should not be informing the comprehensive plan. It's supposed to be the other way around. And I've said this before and I'll say it again, I think I've said this many times in different places. Your comprehensive plan, you think about it, it's literally your land use constitution for the county. So it is meant to guide all the documents that fall down below that. So we should have policies in place that help you achieve the economic development plan that will fulfill the goals of what, and the vision that you have for that. And if it's not robust enough with what we have now, this is where we really want your input. So, again, I wouldn't wait, and the economic development plan should be updated. The one you do for the county should be updated on an ongoing basis anyway, as things change. Should be like your capital facilities plan, where you can kind of touch it every year and do little touch-ups here and there. It should be that, but it should be guided by the comprehensive plan. So, but if you see, a policy, or here's a place we really need to emphasize and it's not being emphasized, that's the policies that we need to consider in our comprehensive plan to help guide that effort.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then I had made a comment a little bit earlier about social justice, but to describe my concern just a little bit wider, and watching Pasco a tremendous amount in the way that they have done recently because of some grant funding. They took one of our major arterials from 4-lane to 2-lane with a turn lane in the center and put a very large bike path along beside of it. And there is now becoming traffic issues on that road that was never there before because of some of the things that they've done. So that bike path is, between a block and 2 blocks from the almost identical path that goes along the river. And so as we are, updating this, I would like us to be very careful about how we design or describe putting our roadways in. Another example is there was recently a very expensive multi-million-dollar project done. I believe it was finished about 3 years ago. Oregon Avenue, one of our primary, commercial industrial ways. And so I've been doing an unscientific but paying attention census. And I have seen 3 people in the last 3 years that I would describe as walking along that commercial avenue. And we went and for miles put 7-foot wide sidewalks on both sides. And so as we identify, a commercial area is not a footpath area. And so they went and spent millions of dollars, again, significant grant funding involved, but I'm looking at that saying, is our community truly being served by building this out in this way, or making this multimodal roadway where that we now have traffic issues that have arisen from us fulfilling the grant requirements? So was it a blessing for the community or not? Right now, I can't see. That pathway, that bike pathway, I have seen exactly 1 bicycle on it since that has been finished. And I travel it sometimes daily, but certainly weekly, and I've seen a single solitary bicycle on that entire stretch. I'm not saying I'm against bicycles. That's not at all my point. But as we go through our comp plan update and the way that we design and do, a lot of times we hear, well, this complies to the complete streets, and we're required to do multimodal. Well, that's true to a level, but it appears that a number of things we're doing in our community right now is to the detriment of our community, not to the advantage of our community.
So, Commissioner, just to assure you and add a little information to what you're trying to bring to our attention, and thank you for that. I think what you're telling us, both the consultant and myself, is that you really want us to look at level of service. And I will tell you, in my mind, in my judgment, and when you say multimodal, I'm looking at level of service for all modes, right?
Yes, sir.
So how do we accommodate all modes levels of services? And that's something we have to consider as we move forward here. But I think that key word that we want to concentrate on is providing a level of service that's adequate to serve all the different modes that are out there in the appropriate spot. So
Yes, sir.
that would be the target that we're going after, if I've captured what you're after.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yesterday, as another example, Burns Road yesterday, we now have bicycle paths that are on the vehicle traveled roadway, and immediately adjacent, within 10 feet, is also a bicycle path. So we have bicycle lanes on the roadway, and we have a bicycle path beside the roadway. And those kind of things make no sense. That does not fit into the complete street's intention. You described it. It is to the service of the need of whatever mode of transportation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. So does that conclude our workshop? Commissioner Mullen, any questions?
No questions at this point, no.
I want to thank you both. This is a great start, but it's just the start. And I encourage everybody to get their input into the meeting.
Thank you, Nicole. That was an excellent presentation.
April 8th at 6 PM, right here in the Commissioners' Room. That's Tuesday, April 8th at 6 PM. So with that, I'll open it up for public comment. Anybody for public comment before we can, at this time, I will.
And I hate to do this, but we need a brief executive session, 5 minutes.
Can we have an executive session in the workshop?
We could amend the agenda.
Well, I'll adjourn the workshop first, but we've already adjourned the meeting.
There's other business allowed. Does that work?
This is a workshop.
We could amend it and put on an executive session.
Is it regarding this?
No, no.
Comprehensive plan?
We're not going to take action, so
You don't have,
it's not for an action item.
will it wait till next week for the regular meeting?
We could have it wait till next week.
Okay. All righty, at this time, I'll adjourn the workshop. Yeah, because I don't know the policy, but we adjourned the meeting, and when we open up the workshop, so